They filled the screen before they ever said a word. Towering, commanding, impossible to ignore. In an industry built on illusion, these men needed no camera tricks to look larger than life, because they already were. While Hollywood quietly stretched the truth about so many of its leading men, a rare few didn't need the lies. They stood well over 6 feet tall, real giants walking among ordinary stars. But height wasn't always a gift. For some, it opened doors. For others, it became a burden they carried in silence, hidden behind a studio-built image the public never questioned. Tonight, we're uncovering the true stories behind Hollywood's tallest legends, the triumphs, the pressure, and the personal battles fought far from the spotlight. And the first name on this list built an entire American myth around his massive frame. John Wayne. Before he became the face of the American West, John Wayne was simply a tall, awkward kid trying to find his place in a world that didn't quite know what to do with him. Standing close to 6'4", towered over almost every actor he ever shared a scene with, and directors quickly realized that size alone could tell a story before a single line was spoken. He became the symbol of rugged American strength, the cowboy every studio wanted to sell. But behind the cameras, the truth was darker. Wayne battled a decades-long smoking habit that would eventually cost him a lung, and later, his life. Even as cancer took hold, he refused to let the public see him as weak, continuing to work, continuing to perform strength long after his body had begun to fail him. Friends said he feared being remembered as fragile more than he feared death itself. Off-screen, his marriages were turbulent, his politics divisive, and his private struggles carefully hidden from fans who saw only the invincible hero. What audiences believed was legend. What Wayne lived was survival. And he wasn't the only towering star forced to hide his pain behind a larger-than-life image. Rock Hudson, he was Hollywood's dream leading man, 6'4", broad-shouldered, possibly handsome, and living a secret that could have destroyed his entire career overnight. Rock Hudson's height made him a natural romantic lead, towering protectively over his co-stars in film after film, the perfect image of masculine ideal that studios desperately promoted to the public. But that image was carefully manufactured. Hudson was gay, at a time when even a whisper of the truth could end a career, and the studio system worked relentlessly to hide it, even arranging a marriage to protect his image. For years, fans had no idea what was really happening behind those charming smiles and leading man roles. He lived 2 lives simultaneously, one for the cameras, one hidden from the world. Then, in the 1980s, everything changed. Hudson's diagnosis with AIDS became public, making him one of the first major celebrities to reveal the illness at a moment when fear and stigma surrounded the disease. His decision, forced by circumstance, shocked the nation and changed public understanding forever. The towering star who once represented untouchable perfection became a symbol of vulnerability instead. What happened next shocked Hollywood and reshaped how the industry spoke about identity forever. Christopher Lee. Standing at 6'5", Christopher Lee was already an imposing figure before he ever stepped in front of a camera. But his true story began long before Hollywood, in the chaos of World War II, where Lee served in intelligence and reconnaissance roles that he rarely discussed publicly for decades. That silence only deepened the mystery surrounding him. When he finally entered acting, his height and deep, commanding voice made him perfect for towering, terrifying villains, roles that haunted audiences for generations. Yet behind that intimidating presence was a disciplined, deeply private man who resented being typecast as nothing more than a monster on screen. For years, he fought against an industry that refused to see him as anything beyond horror, watching lesser actors receive praise for range he was rarely given the chance to show. It wasn't until later in his career that the world finally recognized his depth, casting him in sweeping epic films that introduced him to an entirely new generation. Still, colleagues said he carried quiet frustration about years spent underestimated because of his size and his voice. And this was only the beginning of a pattern that repeated again and again across Hollywood's tallest stars. James Arness. At 6'7", James Arness may have been the tallest leading man Hollywood ever fully embraced, yet his path to stardom was anything but smooth. Wounded severely during World War II, Arness returned home with lasting physical pain that followed him for the rest of his life. Pain few fans ever knew about as they watched him command the screen for decades. His height initially worked against him in an industry obsessed with balanced framing, and many directors avoided casting him simply because he was too tall to fit neatly beside other actors. It took the bold instincts of a friend and fellow star to finally push him into the role that would define his life, a role Arness himself doubted he was right for. Once he stepped into it, audiences fell in love with him for nearly 2 uninterrupted decades, an almost unheard-of run in television history. But behind the calm, steady persona was a man managing chronic pain, quietly, without complaint, terrified that revealing weakness might cost him everything he had worked so hard to build. Fans saw strength. Few saw the sacrifice behind it, and one more towering star still remained, proving size alone never guaranteed an easy path to legend. Clint Eastwood. At 6'4", Clint Eastwood entered Hollywood as an outsider, dismissed early on for having, as some executives cruelly put it, Adam's apple too big and a smile too slow. Studios rejected him repeatedly, unsure how to market a man whose towering presence didn't fit conventional leading man expectations. But everything changed when he left America for European westerns, where his imposing height and steely silence transformed him into an entirely new kind of hero, quiet, dangerous, unforgettable. When he returned home, Hollywood could no longer ignore him. Yet fame brought new battles, intense scrutiny over his personal relationships, custody disputes, and years of tabloid speculation that painted a far messier picture than the stoic characters he played on screen. Unlike the roles that made him famous, Eastwood's real life was complicated, emotional, and at times painful. Still, he transformed that experience into longevity few stars ever achieve, eventually stepping behind the camera to direct award-winning films well into his 80s. His height once made studios uncertain what to do with him. Decades later, that same towering presence became inseparable from everything audiences loved about him. And his story reminds us that greatness in Hollywood was never really about height at all. Sterling Hayden. He once stood at the edge of Hollywood stardom and simply walked away, and few actors in history ever did anything like it twice. Towering at 6'5", Sterling Hayden had the kind of rugged, weathered face that studios loved to sell as the next great leading man. Underneath that image was a restless soul who never wanted the life he was given. Before acting, he had already lived an extraordinary story, working as a sea captain and later serving in dangerous wartime missions overseas, experiences that left him forever uneasy with the shallow glamour of the film industry. Fame came fast, but so did disillusionment. What happened next shocked Hollywood. At the height of his career, Hayden testified during the era's brutal political witch hunts, naming names under pressure, a decision that haunted him publicly and privately for the rest of his life. He later called it the greatest regret he ever carried, admitting he despised what fear had made him do. He drifted from Hollywood more than once, chasing the ocean instead of the spotlight, always searching for something the industry could never give him. His towering frame suggested control. His life told a story of a man constantly trying to escape it. Ted Cassidy. Standing at an astonishing 6'9", Ted Cassidy possessed a presence so unusual that Hollywood barely knew what to do with him. His deep, rumbling voice and towering frame made him instantly memorable, yet those same qualities nearly kept him from ever becoming a household name. When he was cast as a silent, mysterious character in a beloved television series, few expected the role to define an entire era of American pop culture, but it did. Audiences became obsessed with the character's eerie stillness, never realizing the tremendous physical toll that came with maintaining it. Cassidy stood motionless for hours, wore uncomfortable costuming for the era's limited production standards, and battled ongoing health issues that most fans never knew existed. Behind the towering, intimidating image was a soft-spoken, deeply intelligent man who loved the craft of storytelling far more than the fame it brought him. Tragically, his life was cut short by health complications far too early, leaving many wondering what more he could have achieved. His voice and silhouette became legendary, but the man behind them remained largely unknown, a gentle giant whose true story was far more human than his eerie on-screen legend ever suggested. These men didn't just stand taller than everyone around them. They carried burdens most fans never saw, hidden behind smoke and mirrors, contracts and carefully staged photographs. Golden Age Hollywood built its magic on illusion, but these giants proved that real presence, real pain, and real courage couldn't be manufactured. Long after the studio lights faded and their names became history, their true stories remain far more powerful than any myth Hollywood ever sold us. If this journey through old Hollywood's forgotten truths moved you, Make sure you're subscribed, because there are so many more stories waiting to be uncovered.